No sooner had she made the decision than she was crawling forward after the sentry that had just passed her. She had no real plan. It was just that this particular man seemed the most careless. She followed him with the sword still in her hand, able to move with relative silence through brush that she could see and he could not. Maybe if I can come up on him from behind, I can hit him in the back of the head with the pommel like Dent showed me. She was within a length of him, half a length. He started to turn, and suddenly, she was no longer in control of her body. As if she was a passenger behind her own eyes, a puppet in the hands of an unseen manipulator, she felt her muscles tense as the man started to peer through the dark toward her. She found herself ducking down and crouching behind the cover of a bush. She hadn't even noticed the bush beside her, much less that it was big enough to hide behind. He even moved a couple of steps in her direction, but couldn't see anything, and she stayed as still as the disembodied puppeteer could hold her. Then, when he turned away, she sprang up, sword hilt clasped in both hands, and, as a wild excitement filled her, drove the blade through his body, between his ribs, using all the momentum of her leap. The edges of the blade scraped against his ribs, he arced, and made a kind of strangled gasp, dropping his own blade. She seized him around the neck with her free arm, and shoved the blade completely through him, up to the quillins. They stayed that way for a moment. Then he fell. She braced herself and pulled at the same time, and the blade came free of his falling body. He never even made another sound. Then, just as suddenly as she had lost control, she regained it. She was the one who staggered 2 trembling steps away from the carcass, mouth open with shock, heart thudding against her ribs. She was the one who very nearly turned and ran all the way back to the copse where she'd left Verena to take her and ride home at a gallop. Only the knowledge that if she did, they would probably hear her and kill her, kept her from doing just that. "I've killed a man," she thought, legs shaking, sour taste of bile in the back of her throat. Her gorge rose. "I've killed a man. Myself." Except that she didn't know the blow that had killed him. If it had been her doing, she'd have just hit him from behind with the pommel. Nothing like that was in anything Dent had taught her. It was the sword. It had to be. Only a magic sword would have been able to manipulate her like a puppet, and Need was, of course, a magic sword, and had been described as giving Kethry the same power it had just apparently given Kerowyn.